I'm delighted to be here. I've been asked to just make some comments to respond. And so I did not bring a PowerPoint, which you might be pleased with. Sometimes it's hard to continue to follow. I come after a most amazing day of difference, and this afternoon in particular, it's interesting how we heard basically snippets from all of what CIDA does, and our development assistance envelope includes the project kind of stuff, which Kim described and Save, and the bilateral funding, which is the majority of our work that Karen spoke to quite eloquently, and now the broad multilateral framework in which CIDA has been more and more engaged and which has benefited us and allowed us a platform to actually influence global policy in which we didn't anticipate at all. So that's really a wonderful introduction to what CIDA does in a very visual way, and I thank you for that. I would just like to pick up on a couple of things which in some way tie also to this morning's discussion, which I found it made me angry, it made me upset, it made me rethink. I did a full circle of being ready to walk out and then taking notes and being really quite inspired and having, but by the time I'd come to the questions, it was time for lunch, so that was all over. It took me the whole time to get over the fact, well, what is all this anyway? And I also felt, my God, I don't have the dictionary to help me understand all these big words. I'm a policy wonk right now, although I'm an educator. I teach literacy, and now I teach ministers, which means my sentences are now real short. So I really felt a bit challenged this morning in terms of following the really important academic analysis of what we endeavor to do from a variety of places. So what an interesting cross-section of the CGCE and our buddies who have come together. Now, I want to just say a couple of things on my own, and I do apologize that they're not profound, but they are observations more than anything. And I want to start by saying that I'm going to speak about governance because I understood that was my job. And as a donor, our role in terms of influencing good governance, and I know we don't really like to use that because it's defined in a variety of ways, but to influence governance is to show leadership and to motivate those whom we find at the high level tables to behave in a way which we think is appropriate and fits with our understanding of reality. I'm going to borrow someone else's phrasing to say that Hillary Clinton, or Sarah, said, you really should never waste a good crisis. And I think we're in a time of that, although we didn't hear about financing really until just when Sarah was raising the fact that, we're really in a bit of a pickle here in terms of access to financing. And although the IMF, I read yesterday, the IMF has noted that up until now, our developing country partners have not experienced the real impact of the financial crisis in their day-to-day experience, but it's right there. And Europe has been influenced first. Now our Middle Asia is going to has going to be the next wave, and it will go progressively more challenging. Well, some of us heard Jeffrey Sachs earlier in the week, who was in Ottawa, and last week who was in Ottawa, and he's actually inviting those with whom he's been asked to speak to reconsider investing in human capital. This is the time, he's saying, take advantage of the crisis to put your money locally and to focus on education. But more education, more in the way we heard about this morning, not simply basic education, but the full package. And to see basic education within all of the parts of the system, because they are all relevant and they all have an important role to play to enhance functioning of the country broadly. Our objective, our goal, as been said over and over again, our priority in CIDA has been on basic education, and we've moved our funding and our policy fundamentally to follow the Education for All goals. It was a huge shift that was made by senior management, and we have followed through with that, with putting the money behind those goals. Interesting this morning how we have been challenged to say, well, really, is that sufficient? It's one section of the whole picture. And from our, not only this morning, but from our partners, we've been receiving that kind of information as we, over the last number of years, and as we work and move beyond a project approach, which would be specifically to achieve one, with direction from CIDA, more to a swap approach, which is with other donors, to align ourselves with the country program, with the National Education Sector Plan. That's totally fungible, meaning that when we invest, the government is responsible for allocating resources within the sector as it suits their needs, and within the sector to meet the needs of their plan. So that we know that as we don't control the implementation of those plans at all. We prefer not to, which is why we align ourselves to the needs to the country to implement their plan. What I'm trying to say is, plans are not simply basic education. They're not simply achieving universal primary completion. They include the subsectors which are most appropriate. And we've been receiving, from our point of view, a request to be quite comfortable to move to the broader EFA goals and beyond. CIDA's policy has not followed with all the tools and all the policy framing to allow us to justify that. But so our country partners have been drawing us forward, asking for something. Our funding has been going that way, although the policy hasn't followed as quickly. The world is changing a lot faster than some of the policy developments. The world is moving faster than CIDA, which is probably which is fine. Following along behind is probably okay too, but we are asked to be leaders in other contexts, and so some of the things that have been said today will actually be discussed at the G8 table this summer, and I was interested to hear reference to the importance of putting education in a broad context within the broader development goals and within the broader economic and financial and political contexts. That the enabling environment is as important in some ways as the sector itself, because without looking at those other components, without looking at the economic features and the political support, we won't be able to, the achievement within the education sector will not necessarily follow. The Italians who are leading the G8 discussion this summer are calling for that. They're looking for the intersectoral links. They're looking for, they're calling for making sure that whatever is done within the education sector is rooted, is linked to the PRSP, reflects the broader goals of the country in the broader development context. So I was interested to hear that spoken to. I wanted to note the fact that there's some other things which we haven't really articulated, which we might just put on the table in our discussion, that some of you may like to speak to later. CIDA is one player within a much broader, bigger agenda, a bigger arena, and yet we must follow some of the commitments which we make globally, and that influences our ability the way we do governance is influenced by bigger agendas, such as the Paris Declaration, which is in fact aspirational, we know, but some of the components of that really have directed how we govern our aid program and how we work. And we've heard little pieces of that, and that has been probably demonstrated good practice.